And it's episode 14. I think it's episode 14 of The Condescending Evangelist. And you know why I just figured out? I know why I'm the condescending evangelist. Because I'm a Cubs fan. What? Cubs fans are actually condescending to White Sox fans. White Sox fans, I think for years, thought they were the superior franchise. When the truth is, they're basically the same. But see, what's the difference? Cub fans actually support their team. The White Sox fans, good or bad, White Sox fans, they claim to be better baseball fans because they don't support their team when they're bad. Well, they'd be better if they actually supported their team. So therefore, the way I see it, Cub fans are actually condescending. That's why I'm the condescending evangelist. And my brother was a Sox fan. And I think he must have been hit in the head because I can't, for the life of me, figure out how that happened because I don't know anyone in my family other than him who was a Sox fan. It's not like we're born and raised in the South Side. We were born in, I was raised and he was raised. We were both raised in Elk Grove Village near O'Hare. So I don't get where our grandmother was a diehard Cubs fan. I don't know of anyone in the family who was a Sox fan. I wonder if my mom's first cousins, any of them were Sox fans. I maybe. I just don't know. But beyond that, see, this pertains to the scripture reading. I'll get into it. But, I just want to talk a little bit about some things about, because it is Crosstown Classic weekend, and the Cubs dismantled the White Sox today, 13-3. They're clearly the better team this year. White Sox, though, it's a rivalry, and so they chirp. They like to chirp. That's the thing about White Sox fans. They like to chirp, and then they lose, and then they still think they won. It's like they're just, they're kind of demented. When you really break it down. White Sox fans, as I see it, are kind of demented. Because, like I said, they chirp like their team is way above. They act condescending to Cub fans when it's like, no. You see, this is why I'm the condescending evangelist, because I'm a Cubs fan, and the Sox aren't. Sox and Cubs are basically the same. Cub fans are, in my mind, are superior because they support the team, win or lose. Period. End of story. And the Sox fans like to rip on Wrigley, rip on Boys Town, which is next door to Wrigleyville. None of that goes on the South Side? Yeah. Okay. Sure, buddy. Hyde Park. Barry Sotero. You guys own that. Keep that in mind, buddy. Big Mike. That's all South Side. Anyways, I could talk about one incident that demonstrates why Cub fans are superior. Why I am the condescending evangelist, because it's tongue-in-cheek, but this is a real story I got to share. When I was working at IDOT, it was 2003. This is the day after the Bartman game. And my colleague, I'm already feeling kind of down, clearly. And this is why Sox fans, in my mind, are inferior fans because, man, if it happened, I would give my colleague space. He's a Sox fan. If that happened to him, I'd give him space. But it's almost like Sox fans like to say it's Cubs fans' fault for stuff like that happened. And I'll say this: the Cub fans around that area, no, I wasn't happy with Cub fans. Okay, but you can understand like Moises Alou, he threw his glove down like a little baby. I mean, you know, you know what I mean. Cubs did it was the players ultimately I blame the manager because he should have gone to the mound, brought everyone in, and said, "We got to calm down, guys. Calm down. Everything will be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. Just play the game. Forget about what happened just there. Play the game." But he just kind of did nothing, and so I don't blame the fans. I blame the players and the manager. Really, the manager. He could have settled things down. He just kind of let all that happen. And so, now let's talk about what happened at work the next day. Yeah, my colleague, who's a Sox fan, he puts on his Sox hat and gets in my face. I'm like, are you for real? I was so no one's ever done anything like that. First of all, what happened? 1984 is like the closest thing I can think of. Something similar happening. And this is where, I started thinking the Cubs are cursed. Because I'm like, man, that's just wrong. Well, it's like, my dad, see, we were going to watch the game. I didn't want to watch. I kind of blame my dad. See, no. I was immature. I kind of blame my dad for the Cubs losing. I was 8 years old. Because we were going to watch the game later. I forgot. We were at church, I think. It was Sunday. And I think the game must have been on early. Like 10 a.m. Which doesn't make any sense because it was on the West Coast. If it was on the West Coast, I mean the game would have started at 8 a.m. But I don't know. This is how I remember it. Must have had something going on with church that was going on later because it didn't make any sense. The game was on early, I think. I don't remember, but I just remember my dad wanting to rush home to watch the rest of the game live. And then we turn it on, and it's like they were winning 3-0. Then all of a sudden they're losing. The Padres got a couple runs, and they got men on base, and then ball went right through Leon Durham's legs, and the Cubs never recovered and lost the game, lost the series. I kind of blame my dad for that. I mean, that was my twisted 8-year-old mind thinking, but it was like, yeah, obviously it was the Cub players, But then, what makes me think, because in 2003, what makes me think that White Sox fans are just immature little brats, ultimately, because they would do stuff like that, what my colleague did to me. And it's like, man, And my reaction wasn't good. Okay, but at the end of the day, I look at things as they are now. I'm looking at my ex here, and I'm looking at what Sox fans are saying about Cub fans, and how they boast about having the Pope as, like Cubs claim the Pope. It sounds stupid. Both sides of town really are. Cubs boasting about having the Pope as a Cubs fan. I'm like, do the research on that. But see, the White Sox reaction to that, like they can't let that go. It's one of those things. They just don't let stuff like that go. And it's like, Cub fans, I think they say things just to agitate Sox fans, knowing how Sox fans are going to react, and then Sox fans, they don't see their own. It's like, yeah, we know Boys Town's next to, none of that stuff goes on the south side. Yeah, sure. Barry Soetoro lived in Hyde Park. Don't give me that none of that goes on the south side. But the real problem is what I'll explain later. Rivalries in sports, not bad if it's all in good fun, but when they get ugly, it's not good. And that does speak to the scripture portion of fruits of the Spirit. I'll get into the works of the flesh and the fruits of the Spirit. I mean, you see that. The works of the flesh with regards to sports. Look, I see it with the Packheads versus Mountain West. I see this stuff happen. And I'm saying it as a NIU alum, NIU grad, and a fan of the football program. It would be better. I just think it would be better as if the Pac and the Mountain West merged. And someone say, oh, that's just because you think that NIU would benefit more. I think, yes, I think everybody would benefit more. I think the Pac is a superior conference. The 7 schools, it's not a conference, but the 7 schools in the Pac is superior to the 9. You could say the 8 is superior to the 11. The Pac 8 is superior to the Mountain West 11. Yeah. But here's the thing. Pac is still not a full conference. Not without 8 football members. They could be, I think, a basketball conference with 8 members. I don't know how that would work because they'd only have a 14-game schedule, I think. But you could still do it. I think you could. Maybe, I wonder if you have to have 10. If you have 10, you can have an 18-game schedule. If they only have 8. Only 7 in football, 8 in basketball. Kind of a problem. One of the reasons, like, they keep thinking Memphis and Tulane. And now they're fixated on UNLV. At the same time, they keep sideswiping UNLV. I'm like, the only thing that makes sense to me is a merger. Because it's either that they have to take Texas State, and convince them to take a half share, or take New Mexico State. It's pride and ego at the end of the day. It's a work of the flesh. There's a lot of malice there on the pack side towards the lesser schools. But that's so anti-Christian. Some of the stuff I read on the pack side is very anti-Christian. I'm just saying, it's very anti-Christian. What way they berate some of these schools. You know, a lot of these schools have financial problems. That's why they don't put a lot of money into athletics. The ones that are you, and then you've got Fresno State, by the way. They got financial issues. I mean, the more I look into this, it's like there's a lot of anti-Christian behavior on the pack side. I'm sorry. Very much so. And I see that within Cubs-Sox rivalry. Both sides. Cubs aren't much better. Cub fans aren't much. I say superior. It's more tongue-in-cheek. Again, I call myself the condescending evangelist because, I mean, if I balance it all, Cub fans are superior simply because they support the team, win or lose. That's why they're superior. I look at Fresno State fans superior to NIU fans because they support the team, win or lose. You know, it's just that simple. It's why, a merged Pac-12 would work. And, they can cry, the Pac-7 can cry about lack of fan support within NIU. It's like, if you met the White Sox fans, they don't support their team at all when they're good a lot of times. They won't go to games when they're good. Let me look at something too, because something. Let's go look up something real quick. I need to look up something because I saw something. I'm like, let me just see. Let's see what I'm curious about something. Yeah. San Diego State football team drew an average home attendance of 24,800 in 2023. That's not so bad. But it's like, let me just look up something else. For broad perspective, spring enrollment. Okay, that's not what I'm looking up. Hold on. Okay, summary. These average attendance has improved significantly since moving, with recent games drawing crowds of around 30 to 35,000. So 30 to 35,000, somewhere in that range is these average attendance at Allegiant Stadium. And San Diego State's average attendance is about 25,000. NIU had an average attendance, I think, last year of 12,000. Not good. But again, with midweek games and COVID, we're still feeling the effects of COVID in these parts. And, season tickets were affected by the midweek games too. And so, and it's the team, won that game against Notre Dame, but then they lost to Buffalo. So that had an immediate impact on attendance. Fairweather fans, we're dealing with a lot of NIU alums I think are White Sox fans. That's the reality NIU has to deal with. I really think this. I really think a lot of NIU fans, NIU alums in particular, are White Sox fans. That's part of the issue. Nothing you can do about that. It's like 12,000. That's half the number of San Diego State. Well, that number is Cub fans. The other half, White Sox, no shows. That's your White Sox fans. They're not showing up. That's the reality. Okay? That can't be a reason to exclude NIU out of the talk of merging. Because that would be malicious in nature. You have to understand the statics and dynamics of every team. And it's like, you're getting the Chicago media market. You don't know how important that could be for the Pac. Because if you have the Chicago, you want Memphis, you want, like-minded, blah, blah, blah. I get that. But you're not looking at the big picture. And a lot of the schools, not all your schools, like I said, Fresno State, they got similar issues that UNLV has. Similar issues that NIU has, quite frankly. And Utah State, Colorado State, good in basketball, not so much in football. They're kind of like New Mexico. Talk about like-minded. I mean, when you think about New Mexico, UTEP, Nevada, and Hawaii. I mean, a lot of the schools are kind of like-minded. I don't get the thinking totally, because it's like Air Force and UNLV would fit very well in the Pac. Like I said, New Mexico, UTEP, Wyoming, Nevada, San Jose State, Hawaii, and NIU. I don't know what your beef is for real. Other than you'll say too many mouths to feed. There's bottom feeders. Well, every conference has bottom feeders. Look at Northwestern and Purdue in the Big Ten. And for years, Indiana and Illinois, they're now better. But, there's always bottom feeders. Look at, Oregon State and Washington State were basically bottom feeders in the Pac-12. This is why they were left in the cold. Just speaking facts. And so, more in my mind, it makes more sense to have a merger, because out west, and then you have the Chicago media market. It gives you, and you got Hawaii way over here. You got Chicago over here. in 14 schools in the Mountain and Pacific time zones. It's like, how is that not going to work? You know, you're not getting Memphis and Tulane. They're not leaving the American Athletic. Oh, we might as well merge with the American Athletic. No, dimrods, that's not going to happen. What's more likely? What's going to happen? What probably should happen? You don't want to complicate the group of five so that much. That's the issue, as I see it. The media, the TV networks would prefer, I think, everything simple in the group of five level. Well, out east, it's really not that simple. Because you have Conference USA, you have American Athletic, you have the Sun Belt. You got a bunch of schools that are all in the same area, basically. And then you got the MAC, which is in the shadow of the Big Ten. But then you go out west, and it's like, oh, you have like the remnants of the Pac-12 all in different conferences. So it's kind of a complicated mess out there at the power level. Well, at the G6 level, it's even more complicated because now it's like, wait, who's in the Mountain West? You know, those are going to be conversations for the next 5 years. I thought New Mexico was in the Pac, right? I thought Utah State's in the Pac-12. What's Fresno State doing in the Pac-12? These are conversations. How is UNLV not in the Pac-12 and Utah State is? I'm just waiting for those kind of conversations to happen. NIU is in the Mountain West. What? Yeah, it's because all these teams left to go to the Pac. NIU was added with UTEP. Well, I get UTEP. But NIU? Yeah, because they added NIU so they have a full schedule. Oh, okay. And NIU's getting paid more, making more money than they were in the MAC. Oh, now I get it. Well, why the heck did the what happened to the old Pac-12? UCLA, USC, they went to the Big Ten, and then Oregon and Washington followed them. That seems stupid. Yeah, I mean, these are the type of conversations, that are going to be had for the next 5 years. It's going to be funny. So, let me go to the Torah section, the scripture readings here. First of all, the name of this week's study is Kedoshim. It's Leviticus week number 30. And Kedoshim means holy. And so the scriptures are, I don't think all the scriptures are accurate for the New Testament, according to what I listened to, but I'll just read what's written here. Leviticus 19 and 20, Isaiah 66, 1 to 24, Ezekiel chapter 21, verse 1 to 20, chapter 22, verse 1 to 16, Amos 9, 7 to 15, and then it's Matthew 5, 33 to 37. I think it's Matthew chapter 28 instead of Matthew 43, Matthew 5, 43 to 48. I think that one. I think it's Matthew 28. And it's Romans 1, 18 to 32 and 13, 8 to Romans chapter 1, verse 18 to 32, chapter 13, verse 8 to 10. Galatians 5, 13 to 26. I'm going to read the Galatians portion of this scripture study. And I want to play the Parsha in 20 seconds or in 60 seconds. Let me just play this.
Shalom and welcome to Parsha in 60 seconds. Today's portion is from Leviticus 19:1 through 20:27. It is called Kadoshim, which means holy ones. God gives commands for the Israelites to be holy, including, but not limited to, honoring parents, keeping the Sabbath, no idol, caring for the poor and stranger, don't steal, deceive, swear falsely, or defraud, work ethics, not to insult the deaf or impede the blind, judge fairly, no vengeance or grudges, to love others as oneself, observe God's law, no hybrid animals or plants, no mixed clothes, proper harvest, no consuming blood, no divination or soothsaying, no cutting the sides of the head or beard, no self-mutilation, including tattoos, no talking to ghosts or inquiring of spirits. The death penalty was established and enforced as well as rules of exile and other penalties. If the people failed to keep God's law, they would be cut off from the promised land. The Israelites were to be holy and set apart. And that is Kadoshim in 60 seconds.
Okay. So, see, I don't get what that's... does any of that have to do with what you're talking about? Well, it's really in the New Testament portion that it deals with what I've been talking about. And the root of a lot of that is in Leviticus, is in this portion. Because, you know, it's about being holy. Right? Well, in sports, it's kind of impossible because there's rivalries. And right away, you got works of the flesh. And right there, you're dealing with unholiness, basically. And so, it's, you know, remember, I mean, one of the first things that when new Pope, oh, he's from Chicago. Oh, he's a Cubs fan. Oh, he's old. No, you dummies. He's a White Sox fan. I'm like, right there. Pride. South side has a lot of pride, but the north side has pride too. So it's like, it's a us versus them, right versus left. You know, it all plays a deal in what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to read the portion, Galatians portion. Galatians 5, 13 to 26. For brethren, ye have been called unto liberty. Only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Yeah, Cub fans, Sox fans. But if ye bite and devour one another, take heed that ye be not consumed one of another. Well, that goes on, for sure. This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. But if ye be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, sorry, I can't say that word. Lasciviousness. Yeah, I don't know how to say that. Idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murderers, drunkenness, revelings, or rivalries, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. Something to consider. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long suffering. Think about Cub fans, but even Sox fans. I mean, both share in suffering. Sox fans, though, would be condescending to Cub fans when they were like, no better. Let me just keep reading. Long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. And they are that Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not be desirous of vainglory, provoking one another, envying one another. See, right there. That's what needs to stop. That's what needs to stop. It's similar in the political realm. You see this with Republicans versus Democrats. Cubs versus Sox fans. I sometimes throw darts at the Democrat Party. But the truth is Republicans are just as bad. Because when they're in power, same stuff happens. Doesn't matter. Well, it's like with the Cub fans and Sox fans. Sox fans used to boast about how great they were in the 90s. Like, okay, they got to the playoffs 1 year. 1 year. And in 94, I'll say this about Sox fans. 94, we'll never know. But the Expos, they were affected more. To the point where they had to move. That can happen to the White Sox very easily. That's why it's like they keep chirping. But it's like, there's some Cub fans that just want to see them move to Nashville. Who's to say that can't happen? That almost did happen. They almost moved to St. Petersburg, and then they got a team, the Tampa Bay Rays. But then look what happened with their stadium. Well, Nashville is another area that's primed and ready to have a MLB team. Would the White Sox make that move? Well, if they don't get what they want with regards to the stadium, and Nashville is willing to give them, what do you think? Something to think about. If you're a Sox fan, Sox fans will be, I'll still root for the Sox, blah, blah, blah. Will you? It's not the same thing. Especially if they rename the franchise, whatever they decide to rename it. They might do that. Nashville, the Tennessee White Sox, the Nashville White Sox. I think they'll rename it. I think they'll call it something like the Tennessee Hilltoppers or something like that. They might. I mean, it might be like the Tennessee Hilltoppers or the Nashville Rockers. Could be something like that. It's Music City, USA. They would name it after some sort of the Nashville. I'm just thinking of like a something country. It's like I'm just trying to think of like what would go well with like. I'm trying to think. What was the name of that one in Arkansas? There was we went to There was a family vacation. We went to Arkansas, and there was this one. It was like some kind of like music venue. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a concert. It's like, what's the name of that one in Nashville? I can't think of it. Yeah, I can't think of it. It's like a real world famous place in Nashville that maybe something they name it after something to that effect. And I'm saying, it's like if you're a White Sox fan, it's like that could happen. White Sox can move out of Chicago, but if they don't get the stadium they want, because they have a hard time getting people to go in the games. Cub fans don't have that problem. If there's another team if the other team decides to, Cubs will be fine. Cubs will be fine regardless. I wouldn't want to see the White Sox move. The White Sox fans, that's what I'm trying to tell you. As the condescending evangelist, you want to keep your team in the city. Start going against, support the team, win or lose. Stop worrying about the team on the north side. Other than, when you play, it's one thing, but it's like when you're not playing, it's like, why do you care? That's what the Cubs are doing. Pay attention to your team. And I would say the same for the Packers. Worry less about the Mount West and worry about your own situation. And I would tell you, you keep dogging on the Mount West, but Mount West as a conference, the only thing you can do is maybe try to get UNLV. You're like trying to run out the clock on the Mount West too, so that they could pay both Air Force and UNLV. But it's like that's not a good strategy, because what you're doing is then you're weakening the Mount West, thereby you're weakening UNLV, thereby you're going to get a lesser version of UNLV. That's part of the issue, as I see it. I think the Mount West, they're extending the olive branch. They're like, let's see what we could do to get this thing resolved. They're doing the right thing, as I see it. And I look at the scriptures. It's the pack that I'm seeing a lot of malicious stuff. And they think they're superior, and it's like, yeah, you might be good now, better now, but in 5 years, if litigation doesn't go your way, in 5 years, the Mount West could be a superior conference. Get a better media deal than the pack. Who's to say that can't happen? Especially, UNLV gets good. Maybe people assume they're going to go to the Big 12, but it's like there's no guarantee of that. We don't know what the Big 12 is going to be. We don't know anything about what's going to happen. But I talk about this because I've been on this deal, because I think it pertains to sports. Plays a major role in distracting people, and so I talk about it. It's like music, it's like I was a musician for a long time, and music plays a role in what people are into. It's part of a person's makeup. What music they listen to, what music they're into. And sports is kind of has similar things. It's people say it's a distraction, blah blah blah, but it's like I grew up playing sports, not just watching. I played soccer. I played little league baseball. I played basketball. Uh, and I learned some things. I learned some good lessons. Teamwork. You learn a little bit about teamwork. You know. Um, it's not a bad thing. Just like music. When you play in a band, you learn about teamwork in a band. You know. Kind of the same. There's similar concepts there. Um, and so, with regards to the fruits of the Spirit and the works of the flesh, I mean, both are there in sports and music. I see with rivalries, that's a work of the flesh. More within that, I see malicious. I see envyings. I see drunkenness in a lot of cases. Idolatry is there. It's like pride, I would say. Well, hatred's there. Seditions. Well, I see seditious behavior from the pack side. It's subversion too. I mean, a desire to want to, like the Mountain West wants to work with, would like, I think the Mountain West would like Oregon State, Washington State in the conference. I think Oregon State, Washington State feels they are above the Mountain West. And Boise State, San Diego State feel the same. And they convinced Fresno State, Utah State, and Colorado State to come on board. But they weren't able to convince UNLV. They say, well, UNLV is getting paid. Yeah. Yeah, they're getting paid because these schools are exiting, so they have to pay exit fees. Air Force is going to get paid too to stay. Because otherwise they'd leave, go to the American Athletic. That still could happen. What happens if Air Force and UNLV? What if UNLV does go to the PAC? Air Force goes to the American Athletic. What happens to the Mountain West? Well, it becomes like the Conference USA. I think they would become less than the Sun Belt. I think it would be the Conference USA out west. The MAC out west. I would be severely disappointed if NIU ended up playing in basically the MAC West. Because I'm just being honest. Air Force, UNLV with NIU and elevates the other schools as I see it. Well, when you add Oregon State, Washington State, San Diego State, Boise State, Fresno State, Utah State, and you put everybody in the same boat. It's like everyone is raised up, I think. I don't think the Packheads understand this. Because I think they're full of they're just regurgitating works of the flesh. And understanding the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. There's 9 of them. Love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Temperance, self-control, same thing. Like I said, they're not considering something that's scripturally sound. They're not considering this at all. Well, because I think they are full of idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, wrath, strife, heresies, envyings, murders. Murders? Well, hatred towards your brother is a form of murder. Drunkenness, rivalries. And it says that of which I tell you before, as I have also told you in the past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. So I see that on the Pack side, and I also see it amongst White Sox fans. And to some extent, there is in Cub fans. And to some extent, I see it in Mountain West fans. I see it's a similar dynamic. It's not that, look, someone say, well, no, you're biased because you're an NIU fan and you're a Cubs fan. I've known Cubs fans and I've known Sox fans, and Sox fans are generally more malicious than Cubs fans. That's just a fact. Cub fans support their team, win or lose. That falls under the category of long suffering, goodness, faith, temperance. I see that more. Some will say, well, look at all the drunken Cub fans, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there's some of those. They exist, but, they also exist on the south side. Look, Cub fans aren't perfect. Just like Mountain West fans. They're not perfect either. But I see more vitriol coming out of the Pack towards the Mountain West. That's what I see. See, what does this have to do with the gospel? Well, fruits of the Spirit versus works of the flesh. The message of the cross is the power of God. It's the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. But it's the power of God to those of us being saved. Now, talk about like a merger between the Pac-12 and Mountain West would be kind of like a form of the message of the cross, because, well, the way the Pac heads talk about merger, it's like it's foolishness. But those of us being saved, as someone who's form of the Mountain West, you're saving the conference. You could be saving the conference. A merger would save the conference. The Pac-12. It wouldn't, let's put it this way. It wouldn't immediately make the Pac-12 power league. However, the Pac heads want us to talk about Pac getting an automatic qualifier. That's not happening. When you get UNLV, it's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. However, if you merge the two conferences together, there's enough inventory there. You got a better chance of getting an auto bid. Let's put it this way, you got a better chance of getting that G6, G5 bid. Whereas if you're split apart, well, if it's between NIU and Utah State, let's just say, If it's between UNLV and Washington State, if it's between Air Force and Fresno State, you know, you're talking strength of schedule and all that. People will say, well, the Pac will have a stronger schedule. Well, I look at Utah State and Colorado State, and I look at Texas State, if that's who they had. You know, they have UNLV. I don't look at that as a. Oregon State, Washington State aren't power, real true power programs. They're in a power league, but they're not at the G5 level. They're more power level, but amongst the power schools, they're about average. They aren't elite. They aren't elite. So they would not get, you know, it's just a simple matter of, let's put it this way, a one-loss Mount West team is going to get the nod ahead of a two-loss Pac-12 team. No question about it. No doubt about it. Two-loss team is not going to be ahead of a one-loss Mount West team. Two-loss Pac versus one-loss Mount West. One-loss Mount West is going to get that nod. Going to get ahead. So this is one of the reasons why they have to think about another reason they have to think about merger. Two conferences combined. There's going to be two teams in the same conference every year fighting for that. Whereas there'll be one team in the American Athletic. There'll be one team in the Sun Belt, maybe. There'll be two teams in a merged Pac Mount West Conference. Almost guaranteed. Whereas, like, basically going to be one team in the Pac. One team in the Mount West, one team in the Sun Belt, one team in the American Athletic. On occasion, one team in the MAC. Rarely, but sometimes you would get one team in the Conference USA. Well, I mean, you know, let's see, James Madison, aren't they in Conference USA? I think they are. Liberty is in Conference USA. Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee. Louisiana Tech. Those are all Conference USA. So, you know, there could be a Conference USA team every now and then. Make some noise. It's like in the MAC, Toledo, Ohio, Buffalo, Miami. They can make a run. Mount West, NIU, UNLV, Air Force, New Mexico, even sometimes, Wyoming. Let's just say they can't make a run. You got Utah State. No one's expecting them. Colorado State. Nah. Nope. Fresno State's one that could make a run. Oregon State can make a run. So could Washington State. But because you only have so many teams, you're all going to kind of kick each other out of the way. There's only going to be one. Whereas if you have a merged Pac-12, Mount West, early in the season there'll be 4 or 5. And then it'll dwindle down to 2 or 3 in the middle of the season, and then late in the season is going to be 2. More times than not, there'll be 2 teams. Last year there was 2 teams in the Mountain West. UNLV and Boise State. Same thing could happen this year. Of course, there could be another team that's joining the Mountain West in 2026 that could come out of nowhere. If they're 3-0 going up against San Diego State, at Husky Stadium, anything is possible. Because then they run through the rest of the schedule. They'll learn from last year. They'll learn the mistakes they made from last year. Last year they beat Notre Dame, and they lost a bad game against Buffalo, and then they lost to NC State, beat UMass, then lost to Toledo. That's the one. I mean, you know, the Toledo game was like, that was homecoming. That was probably the worst loss of the year when I think about it. Buffalo was bad. Ball State was also a bad loss. That was probably the worst loss. Now that I think about it. Because they had that game won. Would have been the second game they won in the final moments in the state of Indiana last year. They would have won that game. But it's not what happened. Like I said, it's about the fruits of the Spirit at the end of the day. You know, sports. Look, I love sports. I love winning. But you know, you shouldn't, like, you know, at the end of the game, at the end of every game, except for, well, in football they do this, and I think they do this in hockey. Shake hands. Right? Baseball, you don't do that for whatever reason. Football, they do that. Hockey, they do that. Basketball, they do that. For some reason, they don't do that in baseball. That is kind of childish, I think. Maybe that's why White Sox fans and Cubs fans are the way they are. Because in baseball, they don't shake hands at the end of the game. And that's why I kind of stopped watching baseball for a while. Because I observed that. I was like, you know, I have a problem with that. You should shake hands with the other team. At least at the end of the series. Maybe that's what they should do. That would be one change in baseball they should do. At the end of the series, shake the other team's hand. Win or lose. You could shake the team's hand, you know. Did this in Little League. I don't know why you wouldn't do it in the big leagues. At least, at the very least, at the end of the series, shake the other team's hand, because you're not going to see them for a while, at the very least. And then you shake. If you're the winner, you know, the loser goes in the locker room, and the winner stays on the field. That should happen. If I were the commissioner of the Major League Baseball, that's the change I would want. I'd want the teams to shake hands at the end of the series. The winning team, the loser can go back in the locker room. The winner stays on the field. Winner of the game. Doesn't have to be the winner of the series. Winner of the game. Final game. Can stay on the field and shake hands and do what they do. But they should shake hands just at the end of the series. They do it in every other sport. Football, basketball, hockey. It sends a good message to fans. That's what I think. Anyways, because ultimately it's about fruits of the Spirit. Goodness. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Self-control. And there's not enough self-control on social media, particularly amongst rivalries, conferences. I just think that's one of the things that needs to change in sports. Shabbat Shalom.
Goodbye, Toledo.